Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast and also Kansas City Chiefs Insider Podcast. Here with my good buddy Dominic Manchala. Dom, how you doing, buddy?
Dude, I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here with you and talk some football.
Hell yeah. Dom is on SI's, Kansas City Chiefs, reporter. Does an excellent job. I can't say enough good things about him. He's a dear friend of mine, and he's gonna see his first taste of Duval on Monday evening, watching the Chiefs take on Jacksonville. He is. It's definitely like we were talking about before we came on here. It's definitely a different Jaguars team than they've had in recent years. So it actually should be a decent game. The Jaguars were on Monday Night Football last year and lost 47-10 in one of the biggest atrocities that's ever been put on national television. So doesn't look like we'll have to suffer through that this year, though, Dom.
No, I don't think so. I honestly think that these two teams couldn't have found each other at a more perfect time in the schedule. It's really really proving point. Kansas City's coming off of their first two wins, carrying some momentum. Jacksonville's surprising some people underneath the new head coach, Liam Cohen. Got a lot of things going well over there on the defensive side of the ball. I think it's going to be a very, very competitive game, one that fans should kind of, put on the DVR for.
I mean, Jaguars is surprising me. I won't lie. I think I picked them to go 8-9, 9 or 8. Doesn't really matter a difference. Either way, I did not predict them to have. I mean, they had 4 wins all of last season, and if they beat the Chiefs, they'll be at that mark, before the middle of October. So obviously a big game. A lot of key storylines going into the game. One, Dom, on the Jaguar side that I think is really critical is the status of defensive end Trayvon Walker. I think Jawan Taylor should be like doing a prayer circle every night until Monday night that Trayvon Walker does not play in this game on Monday. I think Trayvon's a really bad matchup for Jawan Taylor. I covered Jawan's first 4 years in the NFL in Jacksonville. Great guy. Really, impressive locker room guy, really good teammate. He does some really good things in terms of his ability to match pass rusher speed and stuff, but the one thing he always kind of struggled with in Jacksonville was like handling a power rush, bull rushes, speed to power, and Trayvon Walker, he's literally a walking bull rush. He's developed more moves as he's progressed. He's now in his 4th year. He isn't the uber raw defensive end that he was coming out of Georgia, but his power is still, football players, especially defensive linemen, love to talk about their superpowers. Trayvon Walker's strength is his superpower, but his status is kind of up in the air for Monday. He, had a wrist injury last Sunday against the San Francisco 49ers, left the game early in the first quarter and didn't return. And Dom, I can just tell you, as somebody who's covered Trayvon's whole career, the dude's a freak. He's an alien, one of the toughest guys I've covered. If he's like ruled out of a game while the game's happening, then it's a pretty like serious injury. They tell us on Monday that he's going to see a specialist, and a couple days go by, and Thursday they open the press conference with had surgery day to day. Maybe he'll play Monday. So the fact that he had surgery and seems like has a chance to play Monday is pretty crazy. He hasn't practiced at all yet this week. I haven't laid eyes on him, whether at practice or in the locker room. But Dom, that's how big would it be for the Chiefs offense, and especially their offensive line? I know it was really maligned coming into the year if the Jaguars are missing one of their key players in Trayvon Walker.
I honestly think that I've broken down several times on the podcast before. The offensive line was such a problem last season that going into this year, it was even with adding Josh Simmons to the left side, it's kind of like, oh, are they still legit? And like you were talking about with Jawan Taylor, I've covered him, and with the breakdown of the offensive line thus far, he's kind of standing out as like the weak link. I think that if Walker isn't available, I think that that's only going to allow quarterback Patrick Mahomes to kind of gonna feel a little bit more confident, knowing that maybe this is the game that if Jawan Taylor does end up starting, it's probable that it's going to be a guy that's a favorable matchup on the right side. And able for Mahomes to look downfield. I mean, with other than their rushing approach this season for Kansas City, I think that whenever Mahomes is stepping foot on the field, he still has that aura about him where it's difficult to kind of count against him until proven to be beaten. So I think that if that happens to be the case, it could very well favor Kansas City.
No, 100%. And Mahomes is like even when their offense isn't, putting up fireworks, it seems like he's still one of the hardest guys in football to defend. Obviously, he's had a really good, last couple of weeks. I remember 2022 divisional round of the playoffs at Arrowhead, the Jags playing Kansas City. Mahomes hurts his ankle in the first half, ends up going into the locker room, comes out the second half, and the feeling in that entire press box was when he got hurt, holy crap, the Jags are about to be one game away from the Super Bowl. And then he comes out on a hobbled ankle and he just like limps around the Jaguars pass rush for the next 2 quarters and just does what he needs to do. And that's just Mahomes, man. He does what he needs to do. I think the Jaguars, they obviously you have to prepare for him in a different way because of how he plays out of structure and the plays he creates out of the pocket. But the Jags locker room has been pretty emphasized this week on saying, okay, we can't make it a bigger deal than it is. Obviously, it's Patrick Mahomes, but you can't let yourself, get intimidated by that, blow it up too much. Just on your end, Dom, what's a key storyline that you're looking at going into this game?
Going into this game, I have got it written down. I think that it was an immediate kickstart for the Chiefs offense getting Xavier Worthy back into this rotation against the Baltimore Ravens in week 4. And it almost just seemed like he didn't miss a step. It didn't look like he got injured at all. And you can tell that having him out there gives Patrick Mahomes the utmost confidence to use other wide receivers. I think a key storyline to go into this game, though, is still revolving around Xavier Worthy. If he's on, the offensive game is likely to be successful. If there is another mishap that happens similar to what we saw in week 1 with Travis Kelce and the friendly fire, I think that, or if anything, if he just has some shoulder stiffness or anything like that, he might not say it because he doesn't want to come out of that game, but it is an area that could be a hinder to him and allow them to having to look to other wide receivers. Some of the wide receivers thus far for Kansas City who have stepped up, though, in the time that Rashee Rice has been gone and Xavier Worthy was hurt, is both Tyquan Thornton and Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown, a veteran presence in the wide receiving room. He leads the franchise this season in receptions, receiving yards, targets. He is a reliable option. I think that if he's going to be a key factor in this game, it will be successful once more for the Chiefs. And then additionally with Thornton, he is their deep ball, explosive play, wide receiver. He's a kind of player that is, really coming into his own and kind of finding more of who he is as a player, especially since donning a Chiefs uniform for the first time. And I think, though, that with Xavier Worthy being back, Thornton is still an option for a deep pass. I think that if the wide receiving room for Kansas City is healthy, paying attention to what the Jaguars' defense and special teams is paying attention to, I think that it's going to be a very, very close and competitive competition because the wide receivers are going to have to keep you in the game. Like I said before, with the rushing attack, there hasn't necessarily been a whole lot. Mahomes leads the Chiefs going into week 5 still in rushing yards, an area that can't really happen if you're trying to win a division.
That's crazy. Yeah, no, it's absolutely crazy. I agree with you 100%. I think, outside of Patrick Mahomes, I think from the Jaguars' perspective, if you're looking at who are the 2 X factors for the Chiefs, it's Chris Jones on defense and then Xavier Worthy on offense. I mean, his speed is legit. He's an elite speedster. They got him, watching their game against the Ravens last week. He hit 3 explosive plays. Like you said, didn't seem like he had any rust. Their offense just looks much different with him in it. And as somebody who has him in pretty much every fantasy league I'm in, I like week 1. I was coaching, my Pop Warner football team, and I looked down at my phone, and my wife was like, Xavier Worthy just left the game, and I was like, ha ha ha, that's not funny. You're messing with me. And then I opened Twitter, and I'm like, huh, he really just got destroyed by his own teammate. That's fantastic. No, I think that Worthy is definitely one of the biggest pieces to this game. The Jaguars, I don't know, like for as good as their defense is, I think that they don't really have the kind of defense, especially in the back seven. I mean, their safety duo of Andrew Winger and Eric Murray's been really good, but I've said before, I think it's probably one of the slower safety duos in the NFL. I don't think they have really anybody on defense who can match his speed, so they obviously have to account for him. The one thing I will say is the Jaguars. It's a physical defense. It's the most physical Jaguars defense I've covered. I mean, last week alone, obviously none of it was intentional, but Ricky Pearsall and Jawan Jennings both were already banged up, but they both leave the game after taking hard shots from the Jaguars defensive backs. Xavier Worthy will definitely have to bring his hard hat for the game. All right, let's get into final predictions. So I am 2-2 picking Jaguars games this year. I picked them to win week 1. I picked them to win week 2 against the Bengals, and they lost. I picked them to win week 3 against the Texans, and they won. I picked them to lose last week against the San Francisco 49ers, and they proved me wrong, and I told somebody in the building that today. I was like, straight up, I picked against you guys last week. You proved me wrong. I'm not going to do it again. I'm going to go Jaguars 24, Chiefs 23. I think it'll be a very tight game. Goes down to the wire. I don't necessarily think Trevor Lawrence will have a big game. I think that the Chiefs are kind of a bad matchup for the Jaguars passing game. The Chiefs play a lot of press coverage. They're very physical secondary as well, and the Jaguars receivers, it's not the most physically intimidating group. Brian Thomas Jr. has kind of been allergic to contact, and Travis Hunter weighs about $150. So it definitely isn't a room that I think is a great matchup for the Chiefs defense. But on the flip side, the Jaguars, their offense, they've really been a rushing offense through the first month of the season. You look at the numbers, the Chiefs are like bottom 5 in EPA per play and yards allowed before contact against the run. I think the Jaguars are going to dial this thing back to 1962 and run the ball 40 times. And we'll see if Trevor Lawrence has 20 attempts. So I got the Jaguars in a real tight one. I don't necessarily think it's a statement game because it's only week 5 and it's only as big of a game as the next game. But I do think it will be a close game, but a close Jaguars win. What about you?
I think that, well, that's very, very probable. I think that I've covered several times in leading up to this game that if Kansas City goes into this game with the approach of, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars from a year before, they're going to get hit in the mouth very quickly in seeing how fast that this team is improved. However, though, I do know that these guys are doing their research. They're not going to take any game slightly. And, I think that the Chiefs have got some momentum right now. And I'm just looking at the matchup, I also think it's going to be fairly close. I would say it's probably going to be closer to around maybe 28-20 Kansas City, maybe 27-20, 21. Yeah. I think it's going to be around that area. I think that if Kansas City gets out of the gates quick early and get a big lead, forcing Trevor Lawrence to have to kind of move the ball in, giving a different approach to the defense, I think that will benefit them because as we know, going into this game, the Jacksonville Jaguars are one of the best rushing teams thus far in the National Football League through the early stages of the season. But I do think that if they don't take them seriously, there is a strong world where that score prediction could be flipped on its end, and Kansas City once again gets halted if they don't take things seriously. You're riding the momentum. You have a chance to climb even further back into the AFC West division, which took a really key step back this past week with the Chargers losing. It's open again. I think that they can kind of smell blood in the water, and if there is a way that they can go into hostile territory and silence the crowd while leaving with a victory, it seems like a goal that they always seem to go after. I still putting my money on Kansas City. funny enough.
Yeah, no, it's hard to argue with. I mean, Kansas City, I know they're 2-2, but they're still, to me, them and the Bills are the jewels of the AFC. They're the epitome of what you want a franchise and a program and a dynasty to be. So I'm with you. I think it's going to be a close game, one way or another. I mean, the Chiefs, they either blow teams out or they're in close games. They don't get boat raced. It hasn't happened during Mahomes' career. So we're thinking similar. It's going to be a tough physical game, and we will see who comes out on top. Well, thank you guys for joining us. I'm, of course, John Shipley. Dom, go ahead and give the people your Twitter handle, and please make sure you guys go read all of Dom's work at Kansas City Chiefs on SI. Go ahead and shoot them a follow on Twitter as well. Dom, go ahead and drop your handles for her.
Yes, sir. You can follow me over on X at Dom Minchella. I post and repost every single day leading into any matchup and covering the rest of the series. You can also follow us over at KC Chiefs on SI over on Twitter. Everything gets published there. Analysis, columns, opinions, podcasts, you name it. Kansas City Chiefs on SI is a place to get your news. As always, folks, be kind to one another. Give this guy a follow.
Dom, next time I see you, we'll see if the Tigers and Cubs play each other in the World Series.
Yes,
I love you, but if that happens, I hope nothing but the worst for you. But I appreciate you coming on with me, my guy. And thank you guys for listening as always. We'll be back next time.